All right. Remember how this was just the other day? I talked on stream about how Ron DeSantis' campaign team retweeted a video that showed how Ron DeSantis was a cool, epic-based Wojak man, Giga Chad, for being racist and xenophobic and transphobic, and that Trump was a cuck gaylord, and the end of the video was 8 seconds of DeSantis superimposed over the Nazi symbol, the Sonnengrad, while soldiers marched towards it. You remember that? And then, of course, they, unretweeted the video when it was found out. And I said that the people who retweeted the video within the DeSantis campaign team, they did not accidentally do so. They knew it was a Nazi symbol. They were aware of the fact that it was a Nazi meme. And they only unretweeted it when other people within their group pulled back on it. Well, guys, wouldn't you believe it? I'm right again. Though I was more right than I expected. They didn't just know about the symbol. The DeSantis team made it. An employee of DeSantis' campaign team made the video through another account and then retweeted it through the main account. So it wasn't just, and we know the guy too. He's a Nazi. He's a Nick Fuentes fan. And what's more, these are things that were known about him before he was hired. He wasn't accidentally hired as a Nazi. He was known to be one, observably. They do background checks when you run with campaign teams. And he was employed anyway. Nate Huckman, a speechwriter on the DeSantis campaign, former writer, created the video on his own. So, speechwriter on the DeSantis campaign and former writer for the National Review, by the way. So not just like a guy who makes them coffee. This person wrote words that DeSantis placed in his own mouth. And he was a Nazi and is known to be a Nazi. The DeSantis campaign is willfully hiring Nazis. He looks about how you'd imagine he looks, by the way. There you go. That's the guy. Nick Fuentes fan. Not surprising. Come couch shenanigans and shoe. Maybe they've met each other. Who knows? Who cares? Hope he's having fun. But what facts of the world can we determine from this? Well, first of all, the DeSantis campaign is knowingly hiring Nazis, not only as coffee boys and janitors, but also as speechwriters. This is because the DeSantis administration is, as far as I'm concerned, effectively an openly pro-Nazi organization. He could not even bring himself to denounce the Nazis who were protesting in his favor outside of Disney. The Moms for Liberty Association has openly, sort of besmirched Holocaust victims by coughing through a moment of silence for those who died during the Holocaust. DeSantis openly works with them. It is just a pro-Nazi organization. And this is something that's gone on behind the scenes for ages, right? Nazis never went away in America. Their ideological contingent has long worked to legitimize themselves within the Republican Party, and now they have done so within the DeSantis campaign. And DeSantis is aware of this, I am sure. There's no ambiguity. It might as well be a Nazi campaign. Now, of course, DeSantis is losing, and I think that there's a big association between these things, right? DeSantis is, in addition to being ungainly and not particularly charismatic, also doesn't seem to have a very good read on what people want. The Republican voter said that they were not interested in nonstop talk about anti-wokeness. DeSantis responded by claiming he was going to investigate and then sue Bud Light for working with a trans woman, and then had it written into the Florida educational curriculum guidelines that the benefits of slavery should also be discussed in class. So Ron DeSantis' response to people saying, please talk about anything else, is to go, okay, well, we'll just be worse then. This is because, as I've said many times before, fascists are categorically incapable of rationally analyzing the threats or obstacles that they face. They can't do it. They can't do it because the fascist has to exist in a perpetual state of glory over opposition and fear-mongering against opposition. There has to be a constant whiplash back and forth between terror at the humiliation and power of those who stand before you and triumph over the degenerates who run in your wake. That is the mind state of a fascist. It's the only things they can think about. Their life is completely dedicated to the oscillation between these two states. And because of this, they're really, really, really bad at rationally deciding what to do next. They're just not good at it. This is one of the reasons why the Trump campaign was relatively successful from 2015 and onward, and sort of fell off in perceived effectiveness quite a bit towards the end of Trump's campaign, or right around the January 6th time. You might remember, guys, what did we learn? At the beginning of Trump's presidency and the later bits of his campaign, who was backing Trump? Well, for one, the entire Republican Party. But who was in the entire Republican Party? Well, a lot of neocons. Now, neocons are evil, but they're procedurally evil. They're evil in ways that indicate an awareness of the systems we live in. They're evil in ways that allow them to manipulate. Fascists less so, because they are too loud and dogmatic and too stupid. This is why when you look at the MAGA crowd, you think of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose epic own on the Biden family is holding up Hunter's girthy 9.5-inch cock printed on a paper in Congress. That's her, strike against the opposition. Whereas Mitch McConnell, much more effectively as a neocon, struck against the Obama administration by holding up a Supreme Court justice appointment until after the next presidency, thereby stealing a seat from the Democrats. Much more effective, wouldn't you agree? There is a greater understanding of procedural effectiveness there. So what I'm getting at is that over time, the effective agents of the Republican Party have been whittled away and pulled out of power. The January 6th escapade and all the court cases filed by the Trump campaign in 2020 and 2021, Rudy Giuliani was not the best lawyer they could have gotten, huh? The Kraken, remember the Kraken lady? Speaking of, just today, Rudy Giuliani said, oh yeah, by the way, I was lying. They were cranks. They were lunatics. They were freaks. As time went on, Trump became a less and less effective advocate for his own interests because he didn't have the support network of institutionally educated and patient people. Does everyone agree with this? I think this is like a sound take, right? You go from the beginning of the Trump presidency where he has the full weight of the GOP behind him, and at the end he still does, but the people directly around him are mostly far-right cranks because he's appointing loyalists over anyone else because he wants yes-men, not people who will second-guess him. Now, the thing with DeSantis is that DeSantis is all of that, but worse. DeSantis is the favored guy by the GOP because he's easier to control, but the problem is that being easier to control in DeSantis's case also means that there aren't any overriding personality elements that prevent him from just being a fucking Nazi. So Trump's narcissism gets in the way of white glory in a way that Ron DeSantis's empty shell of a personhood doesn't. So you don't run into all the obstacles that you do with Trump where things get in the way of the farthest possible rightward drift, and you just get Nazi speechwriters. And the problem with that is that Nazis are really fucking dumb. It was really stupid of Nate Hochman, who I assume was doing this so he could talk to his buddy Nick Fuentes and brag about it, to make a Nazi video and then retweet it from a main account, thereby centering on the person he's ostensibly supposed to be supporting this. It's actually bad for your political movement, even for a modern day Republican candidate, to just openly post Nazi propaganda. That's not actually, the subtlety is lost. You need the subtlety. That's how it works. Without the subtlety, it doesn't. And this is what people mean, and what I mean when I talk about fascism being innately self-defeating. The inability to rationally analyze these obstacles and how to respond to them means that there's a tendency towards greater dogmatism, towards greater irrationality with time. Because you never want to be the guy in a room full of fascists to silence the discussion and say, okay, well, that's a great narrative, but we need to focus on reality here. Because what do they call you? They'll call you a fucking degenerate. You can't do that. You couldn't do that. in Nazi Germany, and in a lot of spaces with Republicans, you can't do that today. You can't settle things down because that's a deviation from the dogmatism, from the party line. So things have to get more extreme and more extreme and more extreme. And eventually you get to a point where people are like, oh, well, you know, we've come this far. Let's just openly post Nazi propaganda. Why not? But we don't live in a Nazi country. So the average voter just tends not to think well of that. Even fascist Republicans don't think well of it, you know? Like, the average Republican voter who is a fascist isn't like cognitively a fascist. They wouldn't say, I'm a fascist. They just believe that America is under threat from foreign and internal influences and that, you know, elites have caused a spread in degeneracy and blah, 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 right? They believe those things. But if you told them, you're describing fascism, this is a fascist narrative, they would say, whoa, no, wait, no, I just love my country and I just think things have gone too far with this liberal bullshit. They don't think they're fascists even if they are. And if they don't think they're fascists, they're not going to hop on board the self-admittedly Nazi train. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm talking about, right? There's a huge difference between what people are and what people think they are, but sometimes a shock to reality can actually be really detrimental to a party who's trying to push extremism. You don't want, as a Republican, you don't want your voters to think that they're on the road to Nazism. That's the thing that the left says to pull them out of that road. You don't want them thinking that. So, yeah, this is, well, not good for their campaign. I think there's a lot that you can take from this about the DeSantis campaign and the state of the GOP in general. And I just, the Nate guy has written articles about Nazis being a myth in the U.S. Oh, yeah, I saw this. The guy who made the Nazi video and retweeted the Nazi video and is a friend with Nazis and believes in Nazism has, of course, written articles in the National Review saying the left calls everyone a Nazi because they're cowards, of course, and they don't own their politics. The funny thing is that strategically speaking, this is actually the correct thing to do. If you're a fascist and you want to win, if you're a Nazi and you want to win, lie. Lie, 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 lie. Why lie? Obviously, your politics are retarded, your beliefs are incoherent and horrific, and the people who represent them are monsters. Obviously, you have to lie. So something happened in between December 6, 2022, and a couple days ago, vis-a-vis his, you know, consideration for the value of optics. The president of the New York Young Republicans got caught today, too. Is that true? I know TPUSA used to get caught all the time with Nazis in their group. Because, of course, you know, that's like, yeah, obviously, it's TPUSA. It's not. Where am I seeing this? President of the New York Young Republicans. Where am I? You're saying he got caught? A leaked group chat run by New York Young Republican Club President Gavin Wax featured support of race realism, Zyklon B, that's the gas they gas the Jews with, and oven jokes, defense of Richard Spencer, and slurs. Is this the group that Giuliani had defended, or was that a different group? Participants included white nationalist James Alsop and Proud Boy Shane Trejo. Wow, what a shock. Young Republican organizations are literally just chock full of, like, Zoomer, Nick Fuentes, 4chan, she was friends with these people. I don't know if that's true. I want to double check that. New York Young Republican Club. Shoe on head. I don't know if this was the one. Was it a different? I think it might have been a different group. Not this one. There was another young something, but I don't remember if it was the Republican group or yes. It was the New York State Populist League. That's a different group, guys. New York State Populist League. From the bastion of truth known as the Destiny subreddit. That is a different group, not these guys. For all the disagreements that we've had with Giuliani Head and for all of the asinine populist takes that she's had, I hope everyone here understands that, you know, she doesn't actually like Nazis. Unless she's betting with one, of course. But, you know. Who among us? Probably a lot among us. Who among us? Me. That's. Yeah. New York State Populist League was run by the same people who run the Young Republicans. Well, I cross compare, but different organizations. Speaking of DeSantis, guess who he's considering for an FDA CDC position? Yes. This is what I mean about RFK Jr., man. He did such a shit job of being like a paid PSYOP disruption candidate for the DNC. He did such a bad job. Look at this. Like, immediately, Ron DeSantis is like, oh, yeah, maybe he'd be a part of my cabinet. Oh, that's great. Oh, you're going to do such a good job disrupting Democrat votes. Hi, my name is RFK Jr. All I have to talk about is how COVID's bad. We should hang Fauci. And also, every right-winger in the country loves me. I'm here to make you reconsider voting for Joe Biden. What are you talking about? Come on. Terrible job. Terrible job. Look, if there's anything that I want you guys to take from this, it's hope, all right? One of the biggest narratives that I hate from World War II is that the Nazis were competent. They just weren't. The sole element of competence that I think you can fairly ascribe to the Nazis were legitimate advancements in military doctrine, along with some fairly impressive technologies for their time, a lot of which they cribbed off of Jewish scientists or Jewish nation scientists who they very selectively decided not to kill because they were useful to the fatherland. In every other element of their temporary successes, it's mostly a matter of zeal, not competence. Zeal is effective, but it's no replacement for competence. The actual governance of Germany on an economic, political, and military level was terrible. And that's because, again, fascism is anti-reality. You can't sanely govern a modern country under that doctrine. You just can't. You can't do it. It's not possible. You can run a shambling husk of a country for a time. You can make compromises and concessions. You can do things the way the Chinese do, for example, where you have like a broad range of permissions given in both industry and political life, and you maintain the totalitarian elements in some specific ways. You can go the North Korea route and shut yourself out from the world, but the kind of fascism we're dealing with here in the States, this actual red blood Nazi white boy shit, is a kind of irrationality that is not self-sustaining. It just can't survive on its own for long. They're too stupid. So take some heart from that. I mean that sincerely. This isn't me being vindictive. I just want you guys to know, as bad as things may seem at times, your enemy is ontologically retarded. You're facing down a foe that is ideologically incapable of analysis the way that you are. Democrats fuck up a lot. I'm not saying neoliberals are phenomenal at country governance or anything like that, but they're a damn sight better than fascists are. And even when fascists do gain power, they immediately splinter and fragment. They tear themselves apart. They look for new enemies. They contradict themselves. They reevaluate their paradigms and shift them in ways that aren't to their benefit. And then they realize that and they shift them back. They're contradictory. In ways that assure their destruction. It's mathematical. It's inevitable. So take that to heart. I think that we should celebrate every instance of overt incompetence on the part of our opposition. I think it's emotionally important that we do that. I just don't want people to get the impression that we're all falling victim to a slow, well-laid and deliberate trap, set out by evil but competent people. We're not. There's a lot of enthusiasm and some competence on the other side, but for the most part, we're dealing with a gaggle of squabbling retards. Which is great. I prefer that, personally, to the myth of the cold, efficient Nazi.